What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the JT Sports Podcast. I'm your host, JT. I'm so sorry that we have to discuss the Mike Vrabel situation again. I know that it's more so around the realm of gossip than it is football talk, but the situation just keeps escalating. When you thought it couldn't get no weirder with the whole Spotify playlist that Diana Ruzzini was making, then how she named her kid Michael, I thought that was as weird as what this situation was going to turn into, but it got even weirder with a report coming out earlier that Mike Vrabel and Diana Ruzzini, when she was pregnant, ended up renting out a boat. And then a few hours later, TMZ leaked the video of Mike Vrabel and Diana Ruzzini walking to get on the boat that they rented. And everybody is making this situation to be something more than what it should be. It's off the field stuff. It has no impact on how the Patriots are going to perform this year. But, I got into a lot of arguments with folks on X that wanted to virtue signal. That prompted me to have to explain once again why Mike Vrabel won't get fired and why the NFL doesn't care about morality over production. Aaron Rodgers officially is coming back to play his last season in the NFL for the black and gold. You knew he couldn't retire without playing for Mike McCarthy one last time. Aaron Rodgers gave the Steelers the best quarterback play that they've received in over, 7 years last season. Somehow he's still getting hated on by the national media. He still isn't beloved among the majority of Steeler Nation out there. We're going to break down why the Aaron Rodgers hate makes no sense. There's a big mistake that the Eagles made that's going to hurt Jalen Hurts this season, no pun intended. It also is going to be the reason why the Cowboys win the NFC East. Got thoughts on the power shift coming to that division. I got responses to the backlash I'm getting from Panthers fans when it comes to my take on Bryce Young. Should he get an extension? The disappointing offseason moves of the Jaguars. And what can we expect from the Ravens' new head coach, Jesse Mentor, entering his first season with the franchise? Shout out to everybody that's tuned in. If you live, eat, breathe, sleep, and die football, you have come to the right place. We're talking all things football, NFL, college football, 24/7, 365 days throughout the year. If you're a diehard football fan and you can't go a day without getting your football fix in, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit that bell icon so you don't miss when we drop new content. Also, remember that we are not just a YouTube channel. We are a podcast. You can find this episode along with all of our previous ones in audio format, wherever you get your podcast from, Apple, Spotify. The links are down in the description. If you enjoy this episode, you enjoy the content, you want to support the grind, all we ask is that you give us a 5-star review. We are trying to get to the top 100 of the football charts on Apple, so go ahead, help your brother out. Rate JT Sports 5 stars on Apple. Links are down in the description below. Shout out to Kate Roan with the $20 donation to start off the stream. She says, yes, I made it to the JT Sports live stream. Greatly appreciate you, man. Hey, I appreciate you more than you would ever know for always supporting the channel, supporting the content, and donating money in this society right now with how expensive gas prices are rising and just the way the economy is. It means a lot to me that you donate your hard-earned money to support the platform. Greatly appreciate it. And without further ado, let's dive into it. Now, I know a few days ago we talked about this Mike Vrabel, Diana Ruzzini situation. I don't really care that much for it because it doesn't really have anything to do with what happens on the field. But the situation keeps escalating, getting weirder and weirder. Just when you thought it couldn't get no weirder with the playlist that Diana Ruzzini had made, how she named one of her sons Michael, kind of alluding to, maybe he might be Mike Vrabel's son. The situation just keeps getting weirder by the day. And it got weirder when I woke up this morning And it was reported that Diana Ruzzini and Mike Vrabel rented out a boat when she was pregnant. And I was like, okay, now they're just ODing. This isn't true. Well, TMZ leaked the video of Diana Ruzzini and Mike Vrabel on their way walking to board the boat that they rented out while she was pregnant. And I don't really more so care about the whole gossiping thing, the drama surrounding this. I care about if Mike Vrabel's affair with Diana Ruzzini is going to impact his future job standing with the New England Patriots. I got into a lot of arguments with a lot of you guys on X over this because people are so entrenched with just how bad of a husband Mike Vrabel is, cheating on his wife with Diana Ruzzini. They think that he deserves to get punished for it. After all, we saw Sharon Moore lose his job for a relationship he had with a female staffer. The former coach of the Boston Celtics, something Udoka, got fired because he had a relationship with somebody within the Celtics organization. And a lot of folks are saying that those guys lost their jobs because of relationships off the field. Why is Mike Vrabel excused of that? What makes Mike Vrabel any different from Udoka and Sharon Moore? Well, the first thing is that Mike Vrabel, sure, he's cheating on his wife, he's sleeping around, but it's not with anybody within the Patriots organization. It's not sexual misconduct as what it was for Sharon Moore and Udoka. You cannot sleep with employees. Diana Ruzzini isn't a Patriots employee. She is a reporter for The Athletic. She has no ties to any NFL organization, so it's not one of those conflict of interest things. Then once you knock that argument away, then they hit you with that, well, it just isn't morally right. A guy like Mike Vrabel shouldn't be able to be a terrible husband, cheat on his wife, ruin his family, and not get fired for it. He shouldn't get punished for it. And I agree with that. But there is no rule in the NFL rule book that says that any coach that cheats on their wife has to get fired. They have to get terminated. They have to get suspended. The NFL is a production-based business. They care about Mike Vrabel's ability to coach this team, win championships, win a lot of games. They don't care how bad of a husband he is. And I know that's harsh to hear, but the NFL cares about production. The NFL is not a morality business. It's a production-based business. Mike Vrabel just took the New England Patriots to the Super Bowl last year. It doesn't matter what he's doing off the field. What matters, what he does on the field. Because if you're good on the field, then what you do off the field doesn't matter. You see, if every NFL coach or player with character flaws got punished and kicked out of the league for him, then half the league will be gone right now. There are more people in the league cheating on their wives, sleeping outside their marriage than just Mike Vrabel. Not saying that it's right, but I'm saying that when you're in the NFL locker room with 30 different coaches, over 70 to 90 players on the roster, not everybody is good. Not everybody is a good person. You have all kinds of different personalities on the football team. Rashee Rice isn't the only person that may be beating on his wife or beating on his significant other inside of the Kansas City Chiefs locker room. Not saying that these things are right. I'm not justifying any of these things. What I'm saying is morality isn't that high in the NFL compared to any other workplace. Because if you are a good player like the Atlanta Falcons star pass rusher James Pierce Jr. is, who gave them their first 10-sack season from an individual player over a decade, you're willing to give this dude more chances, overlook some of the off-the-field stuff more than often, as long as it doesn't impact his ability to play on Sundays. And that's the thing. Availability is key. If you're getting in trouble off the field and you're still available on Sundays and you're a very good player, your production matters more than morality. And here's why production matters more than morality in the NFL. Why there's so much emphasis put on production and why morality doesn't really mean that much. You see, everybody loves to talk about how much these head coaches get paid. We never feel bad when a head coach gets fired. Sure, we don't want nobody losing their jobs, but these guys are well compensated. But what about the equipment guys? What about the water boys? What about the assistants that just started getting into coaching in the NFL and they're trying to level up? They're trying to move up the ladder. They barely get anything. Some of those guys are doing it for free. Some of those guys are barely getting above minimum wage. So you owe it to those guys to put the best players on the field so the team has the best chance for success. And when you prioritize having a high moral code, a high moral standard over production, you put those guys' livelihoods at risk. Because those guys, if the team doesn't perform well because they're without their star player, then those guys get fired, and they're not the ones fortunate enough to get a $4 million payday still coming their way for getting terminated. The NFL is more than just what happens on the internet. The locker room doesn't think the same way a lot of you regular people do that aren't in the NFL. Fans can be mad. The media can be outraged over it all they want to. And social media can talk about morality and how it's wrong to cheat on your significant other all you want to. But the Patriots locker room still loves Mike Vrabel. They don't think any less of Mike Vrabel than what they were before. Because Mike Vrabel has earned the respect of the players. Mike Vrabel has respect of his locker room because of how good of a coach he is. Not because he's a great husband. Not because, he's the perfect father. You know, everybody in the NFL has their flaws. It's so many people on the NFL team, within the NFL organization. You're not going to have a bunch of Boy Scouts. And that seems to be so shocking to a lot of casual fans out there that so many people get away with so many heinous acts off the field because of their status as an NFL head coach or NFL player. But this just isn't an NFL problem. This is just a society issue. If you have money, you can get away with a lot more than what the regular person can. Look at what's going on with the Epstein files. The only reason these guys were able to do what they were doing was because of the money that they had. And that money, that power that they had allowed them to get away with that tragedy. Once again, I'm not condoning anything that has gone on with the Mike Vrabel situation. I'm not condoning cheating, especially when you're married. I'm not condoning domestic violence. I'm not condoning anything that these players are doing. I'm telling you that the NFL doesn't care as much as what you would believe they would. The NFL only cares about the backlash. If Mike Vrabel cheating on his wife is costing the NFL ratings and revenue, they'll have no problem getting that brother up on out of there. You see, with the Colin Kaepernick kneeling thing, it wasn't a race thing necessarily. Colin Kaepernick, when he first started kneeling, the NFL didn't care. They started caring about Kaepernick kneeling when the ratings started to go down because of it, and they were losing revenue because of it. Then the NFL owner said, okay, now we got to collude against Colin Kaepernick to make sure he never plays again. Because anywhere Colin Kaepernick plays, you're going to lose money because people don't want to support that. And also, it just is a bad look from a publicity standpoint. So if this Mike Vrabel thing was a bad PR nightmare, they probably would have no choice to intervene. But the dude hasn't broken any rules. Cheating is not the same as being a good football coach. There are two different things. Just because you're not a loyal husband doesn't mean you're not a good coach. You can still be a good leader of men and be a POS off the field. Have you not heard of Urban Meyer? This dude is one of the worst human beings ever for a head coach, and yet he's one of the best to ever do it in college football. But why did it not work in the NFL? Because he just wasn't that good at the NFL. This dude, after they lost to the Cincinnati Bengals, instead of flying back with the team, stayed at his club and was sneaking out on his wife. Come on now, there are more than just Mike Vrabel's, or there are just more than just Mike Vrabel out there cheating on their significant other. There are plenty of other people within the NFL that are cheating on their significant other, regardless if they're married or not. Even though I don't condone it, we're all adults. We all have the power of free will. So what Mike Vrabel does in his personal life is his business. It's not going to get him fired. Cheating on your wife doesn't get you fired in the NFL because there's not a rule against you cheating on your significant other. There's not a morality clause in the NFL because production matters more than morality. Because believe it or not, some of the best players in the NFL aren't really that good of a person off the field. Rashee Rice, Tyreek Hill, come on now. If the locker room ends up becoming divided because of this, which I doubt is going to happen because there's other players on the Patriots probably cheating on their girlfriend or cheating on their wife. You just have to be pretty naive if you think that Mike Vrabel is the only person sneaking out on his significant other. Once again, not saying that is right, but production matters more than morality in the NFL. The NFL cares about how many games can Mike Vrabel win, how good of a coach he is, not how good of a father he is, not how loyal of a husband he is, not condoning cheating, but the NFL condones cheating on your significant other because they don't penalize it because it's not a rule. This is a production-based business, not a morality business. For some reason, though, a lot of people on X don't seem to understand that. The Aaron Rodgers hate is so insane to me. Folks act like the Pittsburgh Steelers last year were the 2007 New England Patriots. Aaron Rodgers threw 24 touchdowns and 7 interceptions on the offense where his two most reliable weapons were DK Metcalf and Kenneth Gainwell, a running back. This offensive line wasn't good. The play calling was abysmal from Arthur Smith. And yet Aaron Rodgers somehow still was able to get the Steelers to the NFL playoffs. He still won the Steelers the AFC North. Aaron Rodgers, in spite of how bad the Steelers' offensive personnel was last year, still had a very good season. The best quarterback season that the Steelers have had in, 7 years? And yet, for some reason, though, Steeler fans and a lot of the folks in the national media out there think that Aaron Rodgers coming back is a bad decision. The Steelers need to go in a different direction. They need to see what Drew Aller and Will Howard have. Guys who haven't even taken a single snap in the NFL preseason. We need to see what those guys have because Aaron Rodgers doesn't have it anymore. Even though he was carrying a bottom 5 offense and talent and had 25 to 7 interceptions. People make it seem like the Steelers were the best team in the NFL with how they just try to diminish Aaron Rodgers. Oh, Aaron Rodgers can't run like that. Well, the brother's like 100 years old. He shouldn't have to run like that because I thought the job of the offensive line was to protect the quarterback. Now, let me know if I'm wrong, but I thought if your quarterback had to run away from the defensive lineman, the offensive line didn't do a good job of blocking them, but I could be wrong. And last time I checked, the Houston Texans had the second best defense in the NFL last year. You got to be pretty freaking delusional if you thought that Aaron Rodgers had a shot at having success against that defense with the personnel that the Steelers had. It's so funny how Aaron Rodgers seemed to be the problem with the Steelers when he was the MVP of the freaking team last year. I hate making it personal, and I'm not saying that every Steelers fan is thinking like this, but I'm mainly referring to the folks that I keep having these interactions with on Facebook, Instagram, and X that keep making it seem like Aaron Rodgers was garbage last year. What this brother did was a miracle considering that this dude's second best receiver was a 5'8" wideout in Calvin Austin, and people thought Aaron Rodgers could have gotten more out of that. Calvin Austin is a wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4 on a Super Bowl team. On most playoff teams, he just so how happened to be the Steelers' second best option at receiver because of how bad we were at that position. Aaron Rodgers, I'm happy that he's back playing for the black and gold because I want to actually see the Steelers try to win. And just because the Steelers have gone over a decade without a playoff win doesn't mean that the season is already a lost cause. If that's the case, why even play the games? Why even show up? Why even attend training camp at this point? Why are we even going through these OTAs, these organized team activities, if the Steelers just have no shot at having success anyway? Because we're going to try to define what this season is going to be based off history. Last time I checked, the games were played on the field. They weren't played and decided by history. If we decided every NFL game by history, the Steelers would be one of the worst teams in the NFL because they don't win a lot in the postseason. And Kansas City would be undefeated year in and year out. What happens on the field matters. And This is the best team that the Steelers have had in well over a decade. I've never been more excited to watch the Pittsburgh Steelers play football than what I currently am right now, because this team is pretty complete. They don't really have a lot of glaring weaknesses. The offensive line has been quietly rebuilt through the draft by Amar Khan over the last few years. The receivers are really good. Now that you got Michael Pittman along with DK Metcalf and Jeremy Bernard, you signed Rico Dowdle, which should help improve the 26th worst rushing attack in the NFL last year, and the defense is good. You got good depth on the front seven. Linebackers are solid with good depth. Defensive line, a lot of depth and talent there. Secondary could still be a lot better, but it's better than what it was last year. I love the addition of Jaquan Brisker. I love bringing back Asante Samuel Jr. There's a lot of talent on this Pittsburgh Steelers team. This is a team that has a good blend of young and veteran players on it. When you have a team built like this, you can't just say we need to throw Drew Aller and Will Howard out there to see what they got. Because Cam Hayward and TJ Watt don't need to see what Drew Aller and Will Howard have, because they don't have time to wait for that. These guys aren't getting any younger. They deserve to play with Aaron Rodgers underneath center, because Aaron Rodgers gives the Steelers the best chance to win. Well, I'm tired of keep doing the same old thing every year, not having a long-term solution at quarterback. Do you think the Steelers are going to keep playing Russian roulette at quarterback forever? No. Eventually, they are going to find a young quarterback. They are going to settle on one, and they're going to allow him to develop. But this notion that the Steelers need to trade everybody and blow it all up, it's just very idiotic to me. It's Madden logic. Madden logic doesn't work in real life. You can't trade everybody like how you can for draft picks on Madden, and then all those draft picks turn into proven high-level players. On Madden, you control how good the players are. In real life, it's random. It's chance. It's a dice roll. It's no different from going to the casino and gambling. You don't know how these prospects are going to turn out. You don't trade proven commodities for unproven commodities for the sake of we need to try to get a franchise quarterback. You could tank for a franchise quarterback and still not get one, because the guy you think is a franchise quarterback turns into J.J. McCarthy or Jamarcus Russell. The Steelers have too many veterans on this team. They have too talented of a roster to waste on, let's see what Will Howard and Drew Aller have, when these guys haven't even taken a single preseason snap yet. People have been gassing up Will Howard for over a year. If this dude was as good as what a lot of Steelers fans believe he is, then they never would have felt the need to draft Drew Aller. They would have been a lot more confident in him in practice. He wouldn't have been the third-string quarterback behind Mason Rudolph. There's nothing wrong with Aaron Rodgers. The Aaron Rodgers hate is solely based on people not agreeing with his political views. And that's okay, because I don't necessarily agree with all of Aaron Rodgers' political opinions, but I can separate somebody's political opinions from the player, because at the end of the day, I don't care about your political opinions when you're on the field. I care about, can you throw the football accurately? Can you win the Steelers games? And that's what Aaron Rodgers did. I could care less about who his favorite president is, what his political opinions are, because it doesn't matter. The dude's a good quarterback. The team loves him. The players love him. So who gives a damn about his off-the-field opinions? They don't matter. This is the best quarterback that the Steelers have had in over 7 years, and fans are just spoiled. They're not happy with it. Steelers fans are some of the most spoiled fans in the NFL, because for some reason, what Aaron Rodgers did last year wasn't good enough. Even though he did better than what the last 5-6 quarterbacks have done underneath center, replacing Big Ben. Aaron Rodgers gives the Steelers the best chance to not just make the playoffs this year, but to also finally win a playoff game for the first time in over a decade. The Steelers last year had a high floor, low ceiling. At worst, we knew the Steelers were going to be a 9-win team. At best, we knew that they were going to go to the playoffs and get knocked out of the first round. This year, the Steelers' floor is just as high as what their ceiling is. They could win 9 games at worst, miss the playoffs. At best, they could win the AFC North Championship again, and this time actually be able to win the first round of the playoffs. The Steelers have one of the most complete teams in all of football. They don't have a lot of great high-end talent, But they do have a lot of solid players at a lot of different positions and a lot of good depth to make up for the attrition that a lot of teams suffer throughout a 17-game regular season. And they also have a better supporting cast around Aaron Rodgers that he should be a lot better this season than what he was last year. And last year was already good. If Aaron Rodgers was throwing 24-7 with DK and Kenneth Gainwell being his two most reliable weapons to throw the football to, he could very well be an MVP candidate this year, throwing to a way better group of wide receivers with a better run game and a healthy offensive line. The Aaron Rodgers hate is just insane and it's unjustified. Most people just hate on Aaron Rodgers because they don't agree with his political opinions. And that's cool, but his political opinions don't define how good he is as a player still. Shout out to everybody that's tuned in. Shout out to Kate Brinkley. Shout out to my guy, Frisco Gaming. He says Steelers confuse me. I definitely don't think Aaron Rodgers was the issue at all. Yeah, like, I really don't understand why so many Steelers fans just hate Aaron Rodgers' guts for some reason. It just is a pointless argument to me. I'm not finna go back and forth with people who think a quarterback that went 24-7 on a bottom five offense from a personnel standpoint is garbage. Wash, can't play anymore. It's just a waste of air. Before we move on, give your brother a follow on all of our social media platforms. You can find us at JT Sports _. We desperately need some more followers on X, man. It's like I'm tweeting to myself most of the time on there. Go ahead and follow us at JT Sports _ is where you can find us on X, Instagram, TikTok as well. Send us mailbag questions. We answer DMs all the time. If you have a good question that could make a good topic for the show, we have no problem answering those things in the DM. So go ahead, reach out to us, follow us at JT Sports _ is where you can find us on all social media platforms. Join our Discord. Link down in the description. If you ever wake up in the middle of the night and you just have this itch to talk about football, we're talking football 24/7 all times throughout the day in the JT Sports Discord. You can go ahead and join that thing. The link is down in the description down below. The Eagles keep making the same mistake with Jalen Hurts. Anytime Jalen Hurts has played his best football, it's always been when he's had an elite, experienced offensive coordinator. His two best seasons with the Philadelphia Eagles, when he went to the Super Bowl, won one, lost the other, was when he had Shane Steichen and Kellen Moore as his offensive coordinators. Both those guys have since gone on to be head coaches and very good on the offensive side of the football. And when Jalen Hurts has played his worst, it's been when the Eagles have given him inexperienced and competent offensive coordinators. Like last year with their previous offensive coordinator, he was awful. And then before they hired Kellen Moore, Brian Johnson, he didn't work out. He was awful. And Jalen Hurts' first year under Nick Sirianni, when Nick Sirianni was the primary play caller, despite being a head coach, he was awful. So the Philadelphia Eagles, their biggest need this offseason outside of finding a replacement for A.J. Brown was finding the upgrade over Kevin Patullo. And I can't say that they addressed that problem. If anything, once again, the Philadelphia Eagles doubled down on another unknown commodity as their offensive coordinator. They know that Jalen Hurts has played his best football when he's had elite offensive coordinators. He's played his worst when you giving him a first-time OC. Kevin Patullo was a first-time OC last year. It didn't work out. Brian Johnson, that was his first time being a play caller. It didn't work out. And now you think that hiring Sean Marion is going to fix what the biggest issue has been for Jalen Hurts? He's only as good as what the play caller allows him to be. Sean Manning has only been a coach in the NFL for going on 3 years now. He's one of the youngest coaches in the NFL from an experience standpoint. Normally, when you hire an offensive coordinator, they started out as position coach for 5-6 years, and they worked their way up the ladder and eventually became a coordinator. That's not the case for Sean Manning. This dude retired a few years ago. He was like a backup in the NFL for 9, 10 years. He ends up getting hired as the quarterbacks coach for the Packers. He works his way up quickly, and now he's a play caller in just his third year in the league. This is not going to work out. The inexperience at offensive coordinator for the Eagles is what has held back Jalen Hurts. When Jalen Hurts has played his best football, he's had Shane Steichen, Kellen Moore, two well-respected offensive coordinators. Guys that weren't calling plays for the first time. Guys that weren't learning on the job. The bad years for the Eagles all look the same. The play calling isn't good, and Jalen Hurts doesn't look good. And now you're asking a first-time play caller who's only been a coach in the NFL for 3 years to have to be able to elevate Jalen Hurts and also be able to find a way to overcome the loss of A.J. Brown. Yeah, that's a lot of pressure to put on somebody that's only been coaching in the NFL for 3 freaking years. This was one of the dumbest decisions of the offseason. The Eagles hiring Sean Mannion just feels like Kevin Patullo 2.0. Oh, you can't get worse than Kevin Patullo. Yes, you can. When you got somebody that's a novice, that's new to this, it can get a hell of a lot worse. At least the Eagles made it to the playoffs last year. With Sean Mannion, the offense could be so bad that it keeps you out of playoff contention altogether. Philly is asking way too much out of Sean Mannion. You're asking the guy that's only been an NFL coach for 3 years to help overcome the loss of A.J. Brown, then be able to help elevate Jalen Hurts because he's only as good as what the offensive coordinator allows him to be. And that's what separates Jalen Hurts from being stuck as just a good quarterback and not being an elite quarterback. An elite quarterback is the system. Lamar, Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, no matter who the offensive coordinator is, no matter who's calling the plays, those guys are always going to be elite quarterbacks. No matter how bad the situation may be, they still are going to play at a high level. Jalen Hurts, Brock Purdy are only as good as what the situation and the play caller allows them to be. They get elevated by the guys calling the plays. And when the guy calling the plays isn't good, they don't play as well. That's why Jalen Hurts has had some of the bad seasons he's had, because the coordinator wasn't experienced. The coordinator wasn't good. So the Eagles doubled down on what was their biggest issue last year, their offensive coordinator not being good, not having a competent play caller, and they hire Sean Mannion, who was just a backup quarterback a few years ago and has quickly ascended to play caller. Too much pressure on this guy. I don't see this thing working out. This was a very bad decision. I don't know why they didn't get Mike McDaniel, why they didn't get Brian Daboll. I have a hard time believing that the Eagles didn't attempt to get one of the best proven coordinators on the market. I feel like a lot of coordinators just didn't want to be handicapped by Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts is a talented quarterback, but he's talented in 2-3 things. And if you can't build the offense around those 3 strengths of Jalen, then you have a quarterback that is very difficult to win with, because you just can't put Jalen Hurts into any scheme. He's only as good as the play caller. And that's why he's only had his best seasons with experienced OCs. Kellen Moore just had Tyler Shuck, who nobody thought was going to be good, playing some very good football last year. Shane Steichen just resurrected Daniel Jones' career last year. These are high-level offensive minds. And when the Eagles haven't had one for him, Jalen Hurts hasn't looked like an MVP Super Bowl winning quarterback. This was a very bad decision by the Philadelphia Eagles, and one that didn't make that much sense to me. I heard Colin Cowherd and Danny Parkins last night giving out their early over-under NFL win totals, and Colin Cowherd, surprisingly, is taking the Dallas Cowboys under 8.5 wins. He doesn't trust them because of how tough their schedule is going to be. And I can understand that. The Cowboys do have a top 5 schedule in terms of difficulty coming up this season. We don't know the weeks that some of their games are going to be played, the order that those games are going to be played in. But just looking at the opponents, yeah, it's very tough. They play a lot of playoff teams from last year and a lot of teams that could be playoff teams this year, along with their division also being tough. But I still believe that the Cowboys will win the NFC East this year in spite of how tough their schedule may be, because last year they were 5th in points per game on offense. They were scoring nearly 28 points per contest. It's just that they had a defense that was giving up 30 points per game. Oftentimes, if you score 28 points per contest, that's good enough to win and be a playoff team. But when your defense is giving up just as much as what you're scoring, yeah, you have no shot at making it to the playoffs when you got to be pretty much Mr. Perfect at quarterback to win. Because the Cowboys had games when they needed to score 40 points to win, and they couldn't do that. I like Dallas a lot more this year than what I did last year because of how improved I know this defense is going to be. The schedule argument is fair against Dallas, but it's not everything. Sure, they play a lot of good teams, but the Cowboys could be just as good as those teams that they're going up against. From a talent standpoint, at least on offense, the Cowboys have one of the best offenses in the NFL. They got an elite offensive line. They got arguably the best wide receiver duo in the league. Javonte Williams was a stud last year. Should have been in the comeback player of the year discussion a lot more than what he was. The only thing they needed was a competent defense. They didn't even need an elite defense. They just needed a defense that could be average, a defense that wasn't giving up 30 points per game. Not only could they not stop the other team from scoring, but they couldn't get off the field in third down or on third down. They were bad in the red zone. They couldn't do anything other than Matt Eberflus. So the biggest fix that the Cowboys made before they worried about the personnel was improving the coaching, which is why the Cowboys stole away Christian Parker from the Philadelphia Eagles to be their new defensive coordinator. I like Christian Parker a lot, despite this being the first time ever he's called plays on defense. He has been a defensive back coach in the NFL for over a decade. He has been responsible for the development of Cooper DeJean, Quinyon Mitchell, and several other very good DBs in the league, and he comes from the Vic Fangio coaching tree. And normally when you hire somebody off the Vic Fangio coaching tree, they normally pan out to be pretty good. The worst Vic Fangio disciple that I've ever seen was Joe Barry, who was the former defensive coordinator for the Green Bay Packers a few years ago. That's probably the worst hire ever made from the Vic Fangio coaching tree. With Christian Parker, his scheme is going to allow the Cowboys to run a variety of different fronts, have the ability to be versatile, and it makes their defense very unpredictable for opposing offenses. Now, you add in a guy like a Caleb Downs, who's going to be that new hybrid star that everybody's looking for. He's like a hybrid safety / slot corner. This dude's going to be an instant all-pro level player as soon as he touches the field for the Dallas Cowboys. You also signed Jalen Thompson, one of the most underrated safeties in the NFL. Very good, just doesn't get talked about how good he is because he's been trapped on the Arizona Cardinals. Now, I don't like the signing of Kobe Durant. I think he's okay, but you still got DeRon Bland. You drafted a lot of talent on the defensive line. You drafted for Rashawn Gary. People are sleeping on how good of a linebacker Marion Overshaw is when he's able to stay healthy. So there's a lot more talent on this Cowboys defense this year than what there was last year, which is why I feel a lot more confident that Christian Parker is going to be an upgrade from Matt Eberflus. I like the personnel that he has, and I also just trust Christian Parker to work out more as the Cowboys defensive coordinator this year than how Sean Mannion is going to work out being the new OC for the Philadelphia Eagles. Because I think that the NFC East this year comes down to the Cowboys and the Eagles. Sure, the Commanders, the Giants, they could play a role, but neither one of those teams are as good as what the Cowboys and the Eagles teams are. From a roster standpoint, these are two of the best teams in football. The Eagles, top 3 roster. The Cowboys, top 7 roster or better, depending on who you're talking to. So with the Eagles, Sean Mannion has a lot more pressure on him than what Christian Parker has coaching this Cowboys defense. Both of these guys are first-time play callers, but the Cowboys don't need as much from Christian Parker as their defensive coordinator as what the Eagles need from Sean Mannion as their offensive coordinator. Because Sean Mannion has to overcome the loss of A.J. Brown, plus he has to be able to elevate Jalen Hurts. Meanwhile, Christian Parker just needs to coach a defense that's top 17 or better. If the defense is just giving up 23 points per game, that's improvement. Not great. You expect a lot more, but if your offense is scoring 28 points per game and the defense is only giving up 23 points per game, you can't win with that. The Cowboys can win shootouts. Dak Prescott is an elite quarterback because an elite quarterback is the system. And Dak Prescott, regardless who the coordinator is, you know that he still is going to play high-level football. He's going to be a guy that gives you 28 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, or better every single season. You know what you get out of him. You don't know what you're getting out of Jalen Hurts with this new OC. And the Eagles have more internal weirdness going on than what the Cowboys do. Sure, the Cowboys are always the Cowboys because of the circus that Jerry Jones always turns the franchise into. But Philadelphia right now, you got A.J. Brown about to get traded. You have leaks coming out about Jalen Hurts being uncoachable. You have question marks about just how good of a coach is Nick Sirianni, just how responsible is he for the Philadelphia Eagles Super Bowl run a few years ago. Is he the product of Howie Roseman giving him a God squad, the Avengers, the coach? Or is he actually a good coach that's just a good raw guy, not really a good X's and O's guy? I think the latter. And with the Philadelphia Eagles, they've had this trend. It started with Doug Peterson. They win championships, and then they fall off. They fire a coach. They get another one that can win them championships. They fall off, and they fire another one. And Nick Sirianni has to go. His time in Philadelphia has just run its course. It happened with Doug Peterson, and it's happening with him. Sometimes you have teams that their success in the postseason is mostly due to the GM giving that coach a good coaching staff and a great team than it is just the coach. Howie Roseman is assembling these coaching staffs. Howie Roseman is putting together these rosters. Nick Sirianni just has to do what's given with him. And he does a very good job of that. And I will admit, he does win. There's been a lot of coaches that have had talented teams in the past that have underachieved, like Jason Garrett, notoriously throughout the middle of the 2010s. But the Eagles right now, I don't think their roster is as good as what a lot of people think. And I just think that they're not a team right now. The Cowboys are. In spite of them being the circus that they are for attention, the Cowboys, I just like them a lot more to win the NFC East this year than the Eagles, because what's going to decide how good the Eagles and the Cowboys are is going to be their two crucial coordinator hires. And I believe that Christian Parker has a better chance to work out as the Cowboys defensive coordinator because the expectations aren't as high than what Sean Mannion has with the Philadelphia Eagles, where the offense must be good. The offense has to be at least top 10 or better, or else you're not going to go that far. I feel like the Ravens are being a little bit underestimated by folks in the media. Now, according to Vegas, the Baltimore Ravens are one of the best teams in the NFL. They are up there with the Buffalo Bills for having the top odds to win this conference, despite having a first-time head coach. And from the folks that I've heard discuss the Ravens in the media, it doesn't seem like they know too much about Jesse Minter. They keep questioning the organization, the structure, questioning how, how good is Lamar still. Lamar Jackson is still the best quarterback in the NFL. Sure, he didn't look like himself because he was playing through injuries. He was trying to get the Ravens into the playoffs and fight through it. But Jesse Minter was probably one of the best coaches that the Ravens could have hired this coaching carousel. You can never go wrong hiring somebody off the Jim Harbaugh coaching tree. One thing about the Harbaugh brothers, Jim Harbaugh and John Harbaugh, they do a phenomenal job putting together a very good staff. You got to remember that John Harbaugh, Jim Harbaugh, both of these guys had Mike Macdonald in both of their organizations. Mike Macdonald initially started with the Ravens. Then he ended up getting traded to Michigan and then traded back to the Ravens in exchange for Jesse Minter, essentially. Jesse Minter has already been with the Ravens organization in the past from 2017 to 2020. So it's not like these players are unfamiliar with him. They don't know who this dude is all. They know who this guy is. It's just that he now has a lot more power than what he ever had the last time he was with the Ravens. And the Ravens hired Jesse Minter because they're hoping that he is what Mike Macdonald has become. And they still regret not pulling the trigger then on Mike Macdonald, hiring him to replace John Harbaugh. Now with Jesse Minter, somebody that comes from a very good lineage of good coaches under the Harbaugh coaching tree, somebody that coached very good defenses his first few years under Jim Harbaugh with the Chargers, defenses that were a lot better than what they should have been from the talent that they had. And then also he had some phenomenal defenses at Michigan when he was Jim Harbaugh's defensive coordinator there, and he won a national championship. Jesse Minter walked into as perfect as a situation as what any first-time head coach could get. Most first-time head coaches walk into situations like the Browns or the Jets. You're taking over franchises that have been consistent losers for decades, aren't that good, have questions at quarterback. Jesse Minter is walking into a situation where you have a team that is equipped to win. You're taking over a team that has one of the best quarterbacks to ever put his hands on the football. I don't give a damn if Lamar Jackson hasn't won a freaking Super Bowl yet. This dude is a 3-time first-team All-Pro, should be a 3-time MVP. This is one of the most accomplished quarterbacks in the history of football. And the thing about Lamar Jackson, when it comes to his playoff struggles are more so on the rest of the team than it is just himself in general. Not saying that the team is responsible for Lamar Jackson's playoff struggles, but I'm saying that Lamar isn't the only one struggling in the playoffs. Like Zay Flowers, Mark Andrews, they've been just as responsible for the Ravens' playoff shortcomings as Lamar. The problem with the Ravens in the postseason has been coaching. And coaching is why the Ravens didn't make it to the playoffs last year. John Harbaugh lost his job because he lost confidence in Derrick Henry with the 2 games that he lost with his late game fumbles in the fourth quarter. And he put Derrick Henry in the doghouse in the fourth quarter for the majority of the season after, because he didn't trust him. And the locker room lost a lot of respect for him because of that, because you don't bench a future first ballot Hall of Famer, especially when he still is in his prime. You should have no problem losing a game with Derrick Henry fumbling the football or Lamar Jackson turning the football over. Because if you're going to lose a game, you'd rather lose the game with the ball being in the hands of your best players. So John Harbaugh is the reason why the Ravens didn't make it to the playoffs. They didn't make it to the playoffs because they didn't have the talent. The talent was there. It's just that the coaching just didn't have everybody bought in. Jesse Minter, being a defensive-minded coach, being somebody that's more conservative, he's not going to allow Lamar Jackson to feel like he needs to walk in the closet and put the Superman cape on before every playoff game. He's going to try to win the same way that Mike Macdonald just won. When the Seahawks won the Super Bowl this past season, was Sam Darnold throwing for 400 yards and 4 touchdowns every single game? No. The team actually played well along with Sam Darnold. Sure, he stepped up in the NFC Championship, but throughout the entirety of the Seahawks' past Super Bowl run, they played like a team. The defense played well. The offense played well. The run game was there. Sam Darnold didn't have to carry the team. That's how it should be. And it's not just for the Ravens. The same thing goes for Josh Allen. When you have a defensive-minded coach, they prioritize taking care of the football a lot more because they know how important possessions are. And now with Jesse Minter, he's going to get back to running the football, prioritizing defense. It's not just going to be Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson, and I said this after Lamar Jackson's rookie season, Lamar Jackson was the only reason John Harbaugh wasn't fired a lot sooner than what he should have been. Because the success that Lamar Jackson had in his rookie season kept John Harbaugh from getting fired then. Because back then, they already wanted to fire John Harbaugh. They already had came to a mutual agreement that after the season, during Lamar Jackson's rookie season, they were going to part ways with him. But with how well Lamar Jackson played, saving the season, getting them to the playoffs, and saving John Harbaugh's job, they said, you know, the easiest way to ruin a young quarterback's development is by giving him an entirely new coaching staff. So they kept John Harbaugh around, but eventually, John Harbaugh was only there because of how good Lamar Jackson was. And now, when Lamar Jackson got injured and the team needed a lot more than just Lamar, they didn't get that because the coaching wasn't good. Jesse Minter, I can see the Ravens having the best defense they've had since Mike McDonald was calling the plays for this defense a few years ago. If he was able to have top 10 defenses with the Chargers, who didn't really have top 10 personnel talent-wise, the Ravens have great corners. They got good linebackers. They improved the pass rush. This should be a top 5 defense or better. And we know how high of a ceiling the offense has. Last year, the Ravens underachieved more because of coaching than they did talent. This year, the Ravens are one of the top favorites to win it all in spite of having a new head coach because the infrastructure is still there. The talent is still there. Most coaches don't get a quarterback as good as what Lamar Jackson is. So Jesse Minter, I know that the defense is going to be good because one thing about anybody from the hardball coaching tree, even if they don't pan out to be good coaches, the side of the ball that they specialize in, though, normally is the strength of the team. Even with the Ravens having a new head coach, I'm still picking them to win the AFC North. And this is coming from a Steelers fan because the floor and the ceiling for this team is higher than anybody else's in this conference. What will be considered a letdown season for the Ravens is probably 9 wins. They have the potential to probably go 16-1, maybe 15-2. That's how good this team could be if everything comes together the right way. But even then, I like what the Bengals have done this offseason on defense, but I don't know if Zach Taylor is a good enough coach to take advantage of a team like the Ravens that has a more talented team than what they do, but may not have as proven as a head coach as what Zach Taylor is. I don't view Zach Taylor as that good of a coach. I think he's an above average coach, but he's no better than what Marvin Lewis was, just with a little bit more postseason success. We know that the Ravens can score on anybody because they have Lamar. But Jesse Minter now gives the Ravens potential that they didn't have these last few years under John Harbaugh because you know the defense won't be a liability. So if you can get a top 10 offense and a top 10 defense out of the Ravens this year, there's no reason to doubt Jesse Minter and what he could do in the postseason. Eventually, we will see a new head coach win a Super Bowl. It hasn't happened yet, but eventually the first-time head coach would get it done. I still got the Ravens win the AFC North in spite of them having Jesse Minter, because Jesse Minter, I think he's going to improve and fix the problems that kept the Ravens out of the playoffs last year and what's kept Lamar from winning his first Super Bowl. This is something so funny. You want to know the easiest way to ruin the Carolina Panthers fan day? Just bring up Bryce Young. Half the fan base thinks he's good. He's justified to get a contract extension, and the other fan base can't wait for him to fail so they can move on and get another quarterback. Now, my problem with Bryce Young and my response to the backlash that I'm getting when it comes to Bryce Young receiving a possible contract extension before the start of this season is that Bryce Young is not as good as what he should be considering what the Panthers gave up to draft him and the position that he was drafted at. Bryce Young was the first overall pick. First overall picks normally go into bad situations, but they are supposed to be able to rise above them. They don't need to have a perfect team to be successful. Not everybody can get the 2024 Philadelphia Eagles roster at quarterback. When you draft a quarterback first overall, you expect him to be able to win in spite of having to overcome certain flaws with the team. For example, Joe Burrow was the first overall pick a few years ago. When the Bengals went to the Super Bowl, it wasn't because Joe Burrow had a great team. The defense was okay. He had great receivers, but the offensive line was the worst in the NFL. Joe Burrow led the Bengals to the Super Bowl because he had good receivers and he was able to overcome the limitations that they had with the offensive line being putrid. Look at Baker Mayfield. He got the Browns to the playoffs for the first time in forever. He was going to an organization where quarterbacks' careers go to die, and he's been the best quarterback draft pick that the Browns have made in probably the history of their franchise. And even though he eventually got kicked to the curb by the Browns, it proved to be a bad decision. Baker Mayfield brought stability to a franchise that went decades without having stability, especially at quarterback. Cam Newton, somebody who every Panthers fan should be familiar with. There's a reason why they call him Superman. They call him Superman for a reason. The year Cam Newton won MVP in 2015, he didn't have a perfect team. Sure, the Panthers had a great defense led by Luke Kuechly. Sure, they had a great offensive line, but the receivers were terrible. Cam Newton's best receiver was Ted Ginn Jr. That's overcoming limitations. Andrew Luck, his career was cut short because the coach did a poor job of giving him a good team. But in spite of how bad of a team the Colts were giving him, he was still able to carry the Colts to the playoffs, get them to an AFC championship. And if they would have done a much better job of building around him properly, he would have lasted a lot longer, and he would have probably won a Super Bowl. If you draft a quarterback first overall, you have the expectation of being able to overcome certain limitations with a team. So when you're telling me that Bryce Young doesn't have this, Bryce Young doesn't have that, Bryce Young needs this, Bryce Young needs that, you're telling me that you overdrafted a super limited quarterback, because Bryce Young can't overcome any limitations that past first overall picks have had to overcome to be successful. You can call it all fair all you want to, but it's unfair how the quarterback gets all the praise when his success is still heavily dependent upon how good of a situation he's in. There are certain quarterbacks that can do more with less. Bryce Young isn't one of them. Bryce Young is only as good as the play caller, the offensive line, the receivers, and the running backs that you give him. I was arguing with somebody in the comment section of one of my shorts that I made about Bryce Young on TikTok who is trying to tell me that Bryce Young is a lot better than what I think. Like, Bryce Young, what's the reason the Panthers made it to the playoffs? Bryce Young never had a good run game. Brother, Bryce Young has had a better run game than C.J. Stroud. The Texans' run game has been worse than the Panthers 3 out of the 4 years that both Bryce Young and C.J. Stroud have been in the league. C.J. Stroud, sure, he's not the perfect quarterback. Sure, the Texans are a better situation than the Panthers, but they have flaws too. Their offensive line hasn't been great. They haven't had a dependable run game, and C.J. Stroud was still able to get to the playoffs and win a playoff game the 3 times he's been there. Even C.J. Stroud has had to overcome certain limitations with the Houston Texans. You can't sell me that Bryce Young, just because he improved last year, he went from looking worse than Jamarcus Russell to now looking like a somewhat halfway decent quarterback. That after one good year of looking like a competent quarterback, he deserves to get paid $40 million and take up 10-15% of your salary cap. This isn't just about how you feel about Bryce Young. This is about, is Bryce Young good enough to justify allocating a certain part of your salary cap to? Because if you pay Bryce Young a good amount of money, then you're going to be paying him money that you could have used to further invest on building up the team. It's like you can't give a guy all this money and then be like, he doesn't have this, he doesn't have that. When you're paying so much, of course you're not going to be able to pay certain positions. You're going to have to be able to overcome that. For example, Trevor Lawrence is going to have to overcome the Jaguars not having the best offensive line, not having that great of a defense. He's supposed to be able to overcome that because of where he was drafted. That's the expectations that comes with being a first overall pick. You are supposed to change the franchise. And you keep saying Bryce Young needs this, Bryce Young needs that. The Panthers had a pretty doggone good team last year. There was a stretch when Rico Dowdle was the best player in the NFL. He was putting up nearly 200 yards all purpose, and yet the Panthers were barely able to beat certain teams because Bryce Young was holding this team back. You see, people keep making excuses for Bryce Young because of hope. You want Bryce Young to be the quarterback that you expected him to be when you drafted him first overall at Alabama. And look, I thought that Bryce Young was going to be the next best thing since sliced bread. I was more high on Bryce Young than what I am right now because I have seen Bryce Young in the NFL, and I've seen that he isn't the same player in the league as what he was in college. And I had to admit that size does matter. Physical ability does matter. How strong your arm is, how athletic you are, how far can you throw a football does matter. And it didn't take me until I saw Bryce Young struggle his first few seasons to realize, okay, so you put already a limited quarterback, because him being one of the smallest quarterbacks ever, on a franchise that doesn't have a lot of stability, doesn't have a lot of talent, yeah, of course, Bryce Young isn't going to work out. And even if you put Bryce Young on the Philadelphia Eagles, they still wouldn't be that good just because of the limitations with his size. Bryce Young at his best is probably a Diet Coke version of Brock Purdy, which is cool. You can win the Super Bowl of that. But it's just way too soon right now to talk about giving Bryce Young an extension when we don't even know if Bryce Young can play an entire season consistently. It's strange to me how people defend Bryce Young because of how well he has played in certain moments, like when he dominates the Falcons and he dominated the Rams, but yet he got outplayed by Tyler Shuck. You feel me? It's just not a lot of consistency there. And if I'm going to give you an extension, I need to be sure that I'm paying for a quarterback that I know what I'm going to get every single week out of him. If the Panthers are trying to win a Super Bowl, you got to get 3-4 good games out of Bryce Young. One bad game could get you knocked out and sent to Cancun. You need to know that I can get 3-4 good postseason games back to back out of Bryce Young, and that can win me a Super Bowl. And I don't know if you can get that out of Bryce Young. I don't know if Bryce Young is the kind of quarterback that every single week you're going to get the same quarterback that you saw destroy the Atlanta Falcons. That would be nice. If that's the Bryce Young that we get this season every week, then this brother probably wins MVP, and he probably ends up becoming one of the highest paid quarterbacks in the NFL. But Bryce Young has just been so inconsistent. He goes from dotting up the Atlanta Falcons to barely being able to get over 100 yards passing. I don't care how good the Seahawks defense was. There is no excuse for finishing a game with 54 passing yards. That's Justin Fields level production. You got the best defense in the world. You can't get to 100 yards passing as a number 1 overall pick. Part of the reasons for the Carolina Panthers struggles on offense are because Bryce Young just isn't that good physically. Sure, he's very good going through progressions, has a very high football IQ, not denying that. But the consistency just isn't there. I'm not saying Bryce Young sucks. That's where a lot of y'all are getting, in my opinion, misconstrued. I'm just saying that Bryce Young has a lot more to prove before we should be entertaining the idea of giving this guy $40 million per season for the next 4 or 5 years, because you end up making the same mistake that the Dolphins just did with Tua. Now, Bryce Young is a much better player than Tua at his best because he's just more mobile and a little bit more talented. But the Panthers would just be making a premature decision paying Bryce Young just based off one season of improvement when he looked like the worst quarterback ever to now looking like a halfway decent quarterback. We're giving you brownie points for looking like the way C.J. Stroud did in his rookie season? Come on now. Like, the expectations should be a lot higher for Bryce Young, considering that this dude was a first overall pick. He shouldn't need the perfect team. He shouldn't need the 2024 Philadelphia Eagles Avengers to look like the guy he was supposed to look like when he was drafted first overall. You are expected to overcome certain limitations. Whether you agree that is fair or not, that's just the stigma that comes with being a first overall pick. Bryce Young is no different from Andrew Luck, Joe Burrow, Cam Newton, Baker Mayfield, franchises that weren't really that great, very dysfunctional, and yet those quarterbacks were able to have some success. Even Kyler Murray, who a lot of people would compare to Bryce Young from a size standpoint. Sure, he didn't really do that much with Arizona, but at least he got the Arizona Cardinals to the playoffs. The Cardinals have been in the NFL since 1928. And these brothers in the last 25 years have only been to the postseason once. And Kyler Murray was one of the few who gave them their last playoff appearance. So if Kyler Murray, a former first overall pick, who is small, just like Bryce Young, can get the Arizona Cardinals to the playoffs, you feel me, and overcome the limitations that came with that franchise from having a goofy owner, not so good of a team, Bryce Young, the expectation should be a lot higher. Panthers fans are lowering their standards because they just want to feel good about Bryce Young. They just would be okay with Bryce Young being a top 15 quarterback. And sure, that's solid, but that's not what the expectation should be for a guy that was drafted first overall. You feel good because Bryce Young made improvement. And I agree with that. You should feel good that Bryce Young is trending in the right direction. But you should still hold Bryce Young to a higher standard considering where he was drafted and how good a first overall pick is supposed to be and what they mean for your franchise. Cam Newton carried the Carolina Panthers. They didn't give that brother Superman nickname Super Cam for no reason. So if you are a first overall pick, I expect you to still be able to win and look productive, not struggle to get over 100 yards because you are a first overall quarterback. And you are supposed to overcome expectations. You are supposed to overcome certain limitations. But it's hard to overcome limitations when you already got your own limitations that you're overcoming, being the smallest quarterback ever. I'm not saying Bryce Young sucks. I'm just saying, can we wait just one more year before we talk about giving this guy $35, $40 million? Because when you make rushed and premature decisions, it destroys your franchise. And the Panthers have a very bright future. But if they pay Bryce Young too early without getting another season out of him, a proven good, consistent quarterback play, they could easily go from looking like they have a promising future to being the disaster that is the Miami Dolphins right now. The Jacksonville Jaguars had the most disappointing offseason in the NFL. When the Jaguars won 13 games last year, it was the most games that they've won in the history of this franchise. And they made it to the playoffs, and they lose to the Buffalo Bills in the fashion that they did. But you felt very good about the future of the Jaguars when it came to their ability to compete for the Super Bowl. And I thought that this offseason, the Jaguars would be able to build off what they did last year, be able to make the team better than what it was last season. Because if you make a 13-win team better, how can you not view them as a Super Bowl contender? But all the Jaguars did is regress. Now, they haven't regressed to where they're not going to make it to the playoffs. They have a pretty favorable schedule. They still have a very good offense, but there's a few pieces that they needed, and they didn't get them in the offseason. And I'm not talking about the losses of Travis Etienne and Devin Lloyd. I'm talking about adding more talent and depth on the interior of the defensive line. What happened to improving the offensive line for Trevor Lawrence? What happened to adding more talent in the secondary? There was a lot more that the Jaguars could have done this offseason than what they were able to pull off. And their poor draft class doesn't help. But their poor draft class isn't going to derail their season. It may hurt their future, but we've seen plenty of Super Bowl winning organizations have a few bad draft classes and be able to overcome them. I'm not really tweaking off the draft class. I'm more so tweaking off the fact that the Jaguars weren't more aggressive at acquiring high-level players. Like the Houston Texans had the second best defense in the NFL last year statistically behind the Seattle Seahawks. Kyle Shanahan and the Super Bowl pre-game show said that there were two teams good enough to win championships with how good their defenses were as long as the offense didn't mess it up. Those two teams were the Seahawks and the Texans. Why did the Seahawks win the Super Bowl and the Texans get knocked out in the division round? Because C.J. Stroud effed it up for the Texans. So what did the Texans do this offseason? They beefed up the offensive line. They traded for David Montgomery. Then on defense, they got a very good defensive tackle from Ohio State, somebody who the Jaguars could have used. Then they also signed Reed Blankenship in free agency. So you take an already great defense and you pour some more gasoline on that thing. God knows how good the Texans defense is going to be. This could be an all-time great defense. We're talking 1986 Chicago Bears level good. And their offense also improved. But the Jaguars, what did they do to better themselves as a team? Not really that much. They went from being an emerging Super Bowl contender to now being just a wild card divisional round exit at best this year. Trevor Lawrence is going to have to put on his Superman cape this year. The defense should be okay, but Trevor Lawrence is really going to have to elevate his level of play. And he did that in the second half of last season. Now, if you're telling me that Trevor Lawrence picks up from where he left off last year, I still think the Jaguars are locked for the playoffs. Because if you're telling me that you're going to get 20 touchdowns and only 4 turnovers, but for instead of one half of a season, the entirety of a season, that's a top 5 quarterback. And the Jaguars are built around offense. That's where the majority of their money is invested at. from trading for Jacoby Myers, giving him an extension, drafting Travis Hunter, still planning to use him both ways. You have Parker Washington. BTJ is still on the roster for now. The Jaguars were supposed to build off a breakout season. Instead, now it just is, you're only going to go as far as what Liam Cohen and Trevor Lawrence can take you, because this isn't a team that is as good as what they should be with how they broke out last year. And the Jaguars haven't had back-to-back playoff appearances since the 99-2000 season, I believe. It's been over 2 decades since the Jaguars have put together back-to-back playoff campaigns. Normally, throughout my lifetime watching the Jags, anytime they have a peak season where they make it to the playoffs, they always crash right back down to earth the following season. And I get it that despite how lackluster this offseason has been, but the fact that Liam Cohen and James Gladstone won 13 games, a franchise record for wins, in their first year with this organization, you got to have a certain amount of trust. And I get that. But let's not act like these guys aren't capable of making bad decisions. I hate how people always love to try to justify bad decisions with, these guys are general managers and you're just on the couch. Okay, so what? Like, did you not see the 2024 offseason Hard Knocks when we were listening to the general manager of the New York Giants justify the awful decision that they were making, allowing Saquon Barkley to walk because they didn't pay Daniel Jones $40 million to hand the football off to a $13 million running back? Even the owner knew that was freaking idiotic. He said that I'm going to have nightmares. I'm not going to be able to sleep at night if Saquon goes to the Eagles. So don't act like just because these guys are in the NFL and they're getting paid millions to be GMs and make these decisions that they're incapable of not being able to always get it right. These guys get it wrong more times than they get it right. The only difference between them and us is that they get paid millions of dollars to be wrong. We don't get paid to be wrong when it comes to these decisions. So just because James Gladstone and Liam Cohen had a lot of success in year one doesn't mean that what they did this offseason can't hurt them. The Texans have been to the playoffs every year DeMeco Ryan has been the head coach. The Jaguars have been through 2 different head coaches since the Texans hired DeMeco Ryan. So, yeah, I'm still going to take the Texans to win the division. I'm not saying the Jaguars are going to be a trash team. I'm not saying they're going to miss the playoffs. I have the Jaguars at 10 games right now. Judging by their schedule, even though the order of their schedule hasn't come out yet, they should be a 10-win team. But 10 wins still might not be enough to get you into the playoffs with just how competitive the AFC is. But I think the Jaguars missed a golden opportunity to really submit themselves as Super Bowl contenders, while the Texans have pretty much made it C.J. Stroud a bust. If C.J. Stroud is just at least average, they'll at least be in the AFC Championship. This is a historic level defense that they have. The Jaguars, it's just very frustrating when you know what this team could have been based on the success they had last year. This is it for this episode of the JT Sports Podcast. I appreciate you guys for tuning in. Make sure you go ahead, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss when we drop new content. Follow us at JT Sports _ where you can find us. Instagram, X, TikTok. Check us out on Apple and Spotify. You can find this episode along with all of our previous ones in audio format, wherever you get your podcast from. We're trying to get ranked inside the top 100 of football podcasts. The only way we can make that happen is if you guys make it happen for us. So if you support the grind, you support the content, go ahead, give your brother a 5-star review on Apple and Spotify. And I will see you guys shortly with another episode